And joining us to discuss the topic of the local elections which have taken place in Poland is Renata Mienkowska-Norkiene, political scientist from the University of Warsaw. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello.
So now, based on the election results and what we have just seen from our colleague, what are the tendencies that we can identify when it comes to how voters in Poland voted?
Well, it's very difficult to predict, for example, the results of the elections to the European Parliament, which you probably have in mind, because if we speak about the tendency, we have forthcoming elections on the 9th of June to the European Parliament. And then in a little bit more than 1 year time, we have elections for a president of Poland. So presidential elections will be obviously very important and most probably will have a larger turnout. However, it's difficult to speak about tendencies without taking into consideration the question of the turnout. And here we come. We see that in October elections of 2023, we had an incredible turnout of almost 75%, which was really huge. And most probably it meant mobilization of more progressive, younger voters and also women. While now in the municipal elections, we see rather lower turnout, obviously, in particular in the second round. But this probably means that those voters of more progressive, let's say, worldview, that they stayed at home more because youngsters were not that numerous, not as numerous as in elections to the Polish parliament. So the question about the elections to the European Parliament, the biggest one, is what the turnout will be during those elections. If it's high, and this is quite problematic, then most probably the currently governing civic coalition together with the Third Way and with the left, they may gain the majority, large majority of votes. But I think that what's at stake, it's actually the winning, and what Donald Tusk has hopes on, it's actually winning himself, so winning by the civic coalition. And this may be tricky if there is no serious campaign mobilizing voters on this more progressive side, in particular younger voters and women. And this may not take place actually if the governing coalition has no clear idea which arguments to take into consideration, because I suppose that Law and Justice will actually play for polarization and will actually choose the harsh campaign and the one which will rather divide the society and raise emotions than unite the society and try to find some common points.
Yes, well, turnout to European elections tend to usually be the lowest of the three elections, if we look at presidential or national parliamentary elections and then local elections. And actually, we have an interesting statistic this time around that actually is the lowest in measured history, that 51% of Poles think Brussels is doing a good job. So approval rating is only around 51%, which leads me to believe that these will be indeed important elections here in Poland. And I think based on that statistic, what are your thoughts? Is there a lot at stake here in these European elections? And will the Civic Coalition, for instance, be able to get the message out to its electorate that these are indeed important elections?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. However, it's also a tough one, as I suppose that it will be very difficult to mobilize electorate to the level which will really mean that those more progressive voters will be motivated to go and vote. And what's at stake, a lot is at stake. Actually, these are, in my opinion, really incredibly important elections, as we know that in particular far-right populists have really high appetite to really gain much more than ever before. And so the position of the European People's Party, on the European level, or European socialists and democrats, and in particular Renew Europe, may be really endangered. Although I have seen some predictions that actually EPP will not lose that much, but socialists and Renew Europe will lose much more. And maybe the populists will not really be the game changer, at least yet. However, I think that definitely at stake is the situation regarding Ukraine, and also some kind of a reform preparing the European Union for the enlargement, including, of course, Ukraine and maybe the Western Balkans. But also it's the question of the future of the European Union, maybe some kind of independence on NATO regarding, well, not fully independence, of course, but something at least alternative. So autonomy of this security related kind, maybe some common army. We know that these are challenges which are incredibly important, and they are really urgent. So speaking about that, I wouldn't say that, well, a civic coalition or the governing coalition now in Poland can afford actually not mobilizing its electorate. So what to do that? Well, first of all, I think that emotions are needed, and also focusing on some, most probably unlike ever before, on some important for the nation, so on national level aspects may be crucial, because usually what I also fought for as a European scientist was that we focus on European matters rather than on national matters. I think this time, since migration topic and other European topics are not that hot anymore, but they will still be exploited by populists, I think we should come back to the topics which are actually quite close to the citizens. But, you know, let's not forget also about technicalities and aspects which cannot be foreseen. For example, the fact that the 9th of June is 1 week after a long weekend in Poland, because there is I think it's Corpus Christi, then of course it may be a discouraging factor for youngsters, which may actually undermine the situation of the more progressive governing civic coalition, Third Way and the left. Plus, of course, also other aspects like not really too much of interest in European matters of youngsters and of people who basically should go and vote. Obviously, this electorate on the side of law and justice in Poland is much more mobilized. It's electorate which, sorry to say that, but it has no pejorative aspect. It's just that they usually go to church, and after church they go and vote, which is a sort of normal and obvious ritual. And so these people who might be a bit Eurosceptical can be decisive. However, I wouldn't make too much fuss maybe out of this data of Eurobarometer of 51% supporting the European Union. Of course, I may assume that these 8 years of a steady depriving the European Union of its significance and hitting into the European Union by the law and justice government, of course, it could have brought those results and the results that the law and justice or United Right expected. But I don't think that the Polish can be so easily de-Europeanized and discouraged regarding a positive view of the European Union. There is also 20 years in the EU campaign. So I think that at the end of the day, it will not be that bad. But of course, the situation might be hard to foresee.
Right. Well, we'll be following all those developments, and hopefully we'll be talking to you about those elections as they are still yet to come. Well, Renata Mienkowska-Norkiene, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it.